Hello and welcome back to F1 Manager 23 with Alpha Tauri. We're here at what is effectively the home race at Imola, and we're kind of hoping for something that borderlines a miracle, quite frankly, because if I'm going to be 100% honest, I do think there is something slightly wrong with the game. Other people have mentioned it, and it does seem like car performance seems to be the most defining factor when it comes to overall performance. The quality of the driver doesn't seem to matter all that much. Now, don't get me wrong, I have noticed that Albon and Norris do tend to outperform Sargent and Piastri. Piastri in the game, obviously, just fairly terrible anyway, but to the point where they are the only ones with points for their two constructors. But if we look at the overall Drivers' Championship, Perez is beating Verstappen, Lance Stroll is beating Alonso, Russell is ahead of Hamilton, although they're fairly even. Max is the better driver out of him and Hulkenberg, and yet Hulkenberg's ahead. So it does feel like it doesn't really matter how good or bad your driver is, your car is going to be the defining factor. And you sort of see, apart from the Red Bulls and Ferraris who are kind of with each other performance-wise now, it's a bit 2x2 thereabouts. Like, it's a pack of Red Bull and Ferraris, it's then two Aston Martins, then it's two Mercedes, and the Haas and the Alpines are alternating as well. And it's been a bit like that with the overall results in the races themselves, aside from when there's a retirement, of course. So it's all feeling a little bit inevitable at this point, and to the degree where I was genuinely considering just pausing recording until they sort this out. Because I do think it's a problem, and I do think it's something that will need to be addressed and will be addressed at some point. However, I'm hoping with some canny development we might be able to break that at some point. The one thing I have realised, however, though, is if you look at rank on grid, and I'll move over to the left, we have moved up a little bit in certain areas, notably top speed when it comes to rank on grid, but in the aspect of cornering and DRS effectiveness, quite frankly, and cooling to a huge degree, we are a massive amount off in the overall performance, just the overall raw stats. We are miles off. And the one thing we are good at, which is acceleration, is the one where the raw stat is very minor differences typically between each car. Like, a little goes a long way when it comes to acceleration, whereas dirty air tolerance, we are 9%, 9.5% behind the grid average. The grid average, that's 10th place. And the cooling, similarly, 16% behind in brake cooling, and about 9 again, and about 7 in cooling, and about 7% in engine cooling. We are miles behind in certain areas. Obviously, we're continuing to design things, but there's a bit of a problem. We're also on race weekend, so there's nothing we can do. We're also on the race weekend, so there's no changes we can make personnel-wise. But I am just going to address something, because someone did ask it in a comment what will be a few races back now. I did say I am recording ahead, so in terms of reacting to your comments in live, it might be a few races down the line, but I will endeavour to obviously respond in kind in the comment themselves. First and foremost, the fate of Nick de Vries. I've mentioned it a couple of times, and whether or not we'll deal with Daniel Ricciardo, which obviously is the real life situation. You can see on the right hand side here, I'm scouting more drivers along with another person staff-wise. First and foremost, I'm scouting anyone who's interested, but I've already scouted 4 that are interested and would probably be more realistic signings. There's a part of me that feels like I might need to abandon realistic for the sake of just getting points, because there's a high chance I'll get fired, quite frankly, because I know the game is being a bit ruthless as things stand, because the objectives are insane. With that in mind, Daniel Ricciardo effectively remains the most likely candidate to take over from Nick de Vries. I'm not quite sure how long I'll give his contract, but I need someone who's actually going to perform. But the problem is his contract demands are fairly high, but it's the most realistic signing, probably other than Mick Schumacher, in terms of just raw personnel, because I don't really want to take another driver from another team, because then it just puts Nick de Vries on that team, and that feels even more unrealistic than whoever I'm signing from them. And the other thing is, someone suggested I should do one-stops. Now, I did do a one-stop in Azerbaijan, and Miami, obviously, a much different situation overall in terms of the weather forecast. But that was in response to Australia, where the two-stop on paper was faster, and the entire AI did two stops there as well. I could have one-stopped there, in the hope of maybe holding people up. The problem is, as soon as you let one person through, your driver's confidence goes down, and then it becomes worse and worse and worse, and you'll inevitably end up further down, just because they become cannon fodder, because their confidence is so low, their attributes are so negative, it's worthless of even being on the track, quite frankly. So until they sort out the confidence dilemma, I cannot do a one-stop in good conscience. Even if on paper it's slower and we may be able to get more points out of it if we're lucky, I will go for whatever strategy that is on paper the fastest. Anyway, Imola now, not a sprint this year, but it does have a different qualifying format. which I will now see you for. So we appear to have gone from a game where the car behind is mandatory given the penalty, regardless of whether or not it's their fault, to the car in front being mandatory given the penalty, regardless of whether or not it's their fault, because Yuki Tsunoda has picked up a penalty because Logan Sargent crashed into him. I did say at the time I wasn't really certain if Zhou Guanyu was responsible for the accident in Australia, and yet he ended up with a penalty. It was kind of a bit of both, that one. This one, most certainly, was Logan Sargent's fault, because he was behind and it was his front wing to Yuki Tsunoda's back tyre. Anyway, car part knowledge obviously a little bit lacking just because we put new pieces on, but the confidence is there nonetheless. It's clear skies and cloudy tomorrow, so none of that in our way. Actually, with the 3-place penalty already on Tsunoda, surely this is when we do this. Obviously, it costs an absolute boatload, but it's going to be necessary at some point. Ironically, the one piece that we could probably get away with most, the gearbox, is the cheapest. And this is the qualifying way. It's mandatory hards, and then mandatory mediums, and then mandatory softs. But bear in mind, we're unlikely to even get to the last one. We should probably have 2 softs of the race. I'm also not sure what the tyre returning principles were for this time round, but we've still got like a half a hard left over. Nick De Vries will take penalties somewhere, but just not here. Or whomever takes over Nick De Vries' car. Anyway, so it doesn't really matter what happens with Yuki Tsunoda here. I'll try and get Nick De Vries a tow from him. And someone else went out ahead of us there. Was that Haas? I think it was. It was Kevin Magnussen. Just dawned on me that we only get one run of this. I'd have been better off waiting until later to do this lap. I'm so used to just clicking go straight away. Then again, tyre wear doesn't matter when it comes to qualifying, so it seems. We'll set a benchmark time of 1:17.4 for Nick De Vries. Yuki Tsunoda 8/10 off. Seemingly held up somewhere, but science immediately goes 2.5 seconds faster. Good God. Although we've held a few people up there, which might work in our favour. If we can get De Vries through to the top 15, that'll be lovely, but I'm not feeling entirely confident. Yep, there goes Piastri, faster somehow. We'll try and find sensible people for Tsunoda and De Vries to follow. I don't think Tsunoda's time actually matters, because in regards to qualifying objectives, etc., I don't know if the sponsors care about where they are at the point of crossing the line or where they actually start for the race. I'm essentially looking for McLaren, so they're both on the track. I'm looking for the other Alfa Romeo here. Looking for Williams's, maybe a Haas. Ideally, I'm going to stick De Vries behind a Alfa Romeo just because I think his time might matter more here. Although it'd be great if literally anyone came out now. Where is everyone? I don't know how much further I can actually push this as standard. I'm going to have to go myself. Oh, now they come out. Great. And there's a red flag. 0 breaks given. I don't even know who red flagged it, Kevin Magnussen. I cannot catch a break. Oh no, he's gone from 20th to 20th with 19 grid places. Good to know that the other 3 things add up to 16 somehow. And bizarrely, has not affected his confidence qualifying 20th, so that's not going to work, is it? 122.06 medium to hard is barely going to do it in his own right. 122.04 soft to hard is barely going to do it. 122.6 for a 2-stop. Well, it is a 1-stop race, that's for certain, then, because medium to hard is the same as soft, medium, soft, so might as well. I don't know which is better, because the temptation with Yuki is to start on hards, because he's at the back anyway, and then go on the faster compound towards the end, or, you know, because knowing that this strategy is essentially going to only just get there regardless, I think we have to try that with Nick. Does medium hard give you more options? Because you're essentially sort of just waiting to see if there's a safety car. Also, I don't think Yuki's as good on his tyres as Nick is. Weirdly, the reverse is 4 seconds slower. Now 28 that comes in on. It wasn't factoring in his fresh set. It wasn't using the fresh hards to begin with. That's what the issue was there. I'm tempted to do it in reverse with Yuki, because then it just gives you the time to decide essentially later on what you want to do. It's probably going to backfire, but who knows? Whatever. Problem is, you just absolutely cannot push with either vehicle really at this stage. The good news is confidence can't really be too affected because they can only go forwards.
This is it, the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. And it's lights out, and away we go.
Yuki Tsunoda's hard starting at 104 degrees, weirdly. Actually, neither tyre starting in the cold temperatures. And immediately Nick De Vries is up to... No, he isn't. Tsunoda's up to 19th. No, he isn't. It was all looking so promising for a moment. Also, were we lied to on tyre temperatures there? Because I'm on push there, and the temperature went down. I'll come back in. There's been no incidents. De Vries has got the Alfa Romeo, though. I've heard a crash. That sounded like it was behind. Right, we're going to have to wait for this incident, but what's broken? Suspension front wing is minor. Can't see any proper brakes on it, so he might be okay there. It's immediately put his confidence very low, though. So his tyres are still... and he's been served the penalty for whatever this is, so I'm guessing he was the driver in front. These tyres are on 55%. Obviously, they're not going to get to the end. but I feel like it might be worth just running them until they need a pit stop and then putting on mediums and then basically seeing what happens from there. What's happening?
And not just one car involved in that, as you can see. And they'll have to pick themselves up after
I'd like to
that.
see another angle of that. It's taken Bottas out though, so the only thing is obviously the benefit that the virtual safety car provides. Might as well do it now. And he had a pit stop issue on top of all that. It's the best pit stop of the day. It's the only pit stop of the day. So it's all on Nick de Vries now. It kind of was anyway. But hang on a second. Let me just check. That damaged the gearbox. At least the gearbox is only 1 million. But come on. I feel like I need to bring that down anyway now at this point. Russell's behind us. Russell was behind from lap 1. Watch his overtake from Nick de Vries on Piastri because it's the rarity that Nick de Vries does anything. So positive signs here. I don't know why Russell's 18th. There's been another incident. There's a yellow flag, but nothing further. Sargent spun on 17. Imola is providing carnage already. It just vanishes. Well, George Russell sort of inadvertently helping Nick de Vries here by pressuring Zhou Guanyu as well. Just sort of keeping them... Piastri and Zhou Guanyu also on softs, worth mentioning. De Vries is actually good. He's on the back of Norris. Now, one thing that seems to have been feedback so far, generally in the community, is that battle assist just makes you slower. For some reason, didn't realise that Tsunoda was still pushing his tyres. If we can break the toe on Piastri, that would be great. Thank you. Get those tyres in temperature, Yuki. There we go. I have a feeling the other damage is... I mean, I'm vaguely hoping for a safety car at this point. I mean, it's Hülkenberg on his own, just going by. I'm weirdly in a similar boat to Sainz and Ferrari at Belgium, where I feel like I'm just losing time. Actually, I'm going to keep pushing the fuel. I forgot to try under-fueling and then just not pushing in the race. But he is just constantly losing time to Sargent now. Like, he is 2 seconds slower than Sargent in 18, which doesn't feel right. Also, Sargent doing 120.7 just feels wrong in general. But De Vries is faster than Albon. Sadly, he's got Russell for company and he can't catch Norris and Albon, even though he is faster than Albon. Can't get within that second. I almost want George to come through now. That is a successful defend from Nick de Vries, which is probably why he can't catch Albon, because he's spending time doing this. Yuki's suddenly 40 seconds behind. Has he just been lapped? No. Yuki's just on a 123 as there's another incident, briefly. I might have to retire Yuki. He's about to be lapped. I think the damage to his vehicle, he's 3 seconds slower than literally everyone else. And he's on a medium tyre now. It's not like he's on a hard. Trying to work out like comparative vehicles, but Zhou Guanyu's on a soft. He's 1.5 seconds slower than Sargent. Oh, we've caught Albon. Just all of a sudden. All of a sudden, Albon's ahead of us. I'm not sure how that's happened. Of course, his confidence is low, so that's affecting things. Oh, his confidence is low. That's why he's slow now. So he's got negative modifiers and everything from one crash. As Nick de Vries gets Albon. There's signs of life all of a sudden at AlphaTauri. Nick de Vries started 18th, don't forget. I mean, I'd like a camera angle that was actually relatively useful there, but never mind. I can keep pushing that fuel. We can just conserve later on if we have to. Yeah, this is going to be a problem. I think it's the major suspension damage that's the problem. As Yuki Tsunoda just vanishes from the track entirely. That's a shame. There's no point burning the extra engine. Like, the engine weigh's so high as is. Trying to see if we can actually break DRS. Oh, Russell's got past now. I'm going to stop pushing the fuel now, I think. I'm kind of hoping Albon could stay outside of a second of Russell here. Because if De Vries can hold on to Russell, which he kind of does, briefly. Oh, I think he's lost the soft tyres though. Russell's softs are really worn as well. I feel like Russell must have had an incident early on to have ended up 18th on lap 1 and done his tyres in a little bit as well, because he's kind of got the same tyre wear as Hülkenberg and Sargent, who also had little moments. Although Magnussen and Stroll have quite bad tyres too, and they haven't. Trying to work out if Nick de Vries can push his tyres at all. But at the very least, Albon on his slightly better mediums can keep de Vries forwards a bit. So he's got one more lap, and he goes on the hards for the rest of this. I'm going to go aggressive, not attacking. Comes out ahead of Zhou Guanyu with 4th fastest pit stop. I didn't realise there'd been any other pit stops. Who's pitted? Zhou Guanyu and Piastri and Ocon. Hülkenberg now. Wait, hang on. So there's 3 other pit stops plus Tsunoda's. So 4 other pit stops and we're still 4th. I felt like Tsunoda's was the only one slow because it was 13 seconds. Unbelievably, I think that's the slowest regular pit stop. There we are. So tyre wears, temperature's in the right area now. 119.6 from De Vries there. Albon's at a 121.3, so he's faster than Albon. Fortunately, Russell pitted, so I don't know why I'm tracking Russell as if he was ever in our race. So Sargent ahead, but he hasn't pitted. and he's doing the same lap time somehow on 29% mediums. How is Sargent doing 129.7s? 129.9, sorry. There's no one in front of him, so it's not like he's being towed along or anything. How is he just on 129.9? That one still has not pitted. Good, that saves us that bother of having to overtake him. De Vries back up to 14. And I think Bottas was ahead of him on the road, but he'd already overtaken Bottas when Tsunoda crashed into him, obviously. So all the places De Vries has now is completely legitimate. Norris has done a 143. Did he just pit? He must have done. It's a shame that he was so far ahead. Albon's still doing 121s on those mediums. Hulkenberg is alarmingly fast behind. Hulkenberg's just done the same lap time as Verstappen, just to put that into perspective. Admittedly, DRS is involved. Wait, Norris is behind all of a sudden. Why is Norris behind? I think Norris has just had an off. But Albon's pitted and he is 21 seconds behind De Vries, but he's got Hulkenberg and Norris for company. Who were ahead of him before all this, but, you know, anything can happen now. Sadly, it's not really a lot we can... I mean, I'm going to show these highlights because we've only got De Vries in the race now. Around the outside. I'll be intrigued to see if they view 14th as a positive here. This might be a relatively short video just because not really a lot going on with De Vries. He's staying with Hulkenberg, though. Like, that Haas is obviously a much faster car than us right now. And he's just staying in their DRS. And he's just staying in Hulkenberg's DRS. Not this time, though. And the second he doesn't, Norris gets him. I don't know what happened there, but suddenly Norris got him. And he can't stay in Norris's DRS for some reason. That's weird. It's just like they just turned their engine up. I think we can push the fuel for a few laps just to keep things going there. The recovery rate seems to be relatively sensible. Piastri's pitted again. Yeah, Piastri's done a two-stop there. Back onto softs. Miles behind, though. Verstappen just come over to lap Norris. Have they all pitted? Yeah, they've all pitted now. So everyone has pitted. Obviously, it's lap 52. It's been a bit of a dull race, really. We're on lap 52, and I've got nothing really to talk about. 14th is good, because that's progress forward for De Vries in the race. Still nowhere near points. The last point scorer is Magnussen, who is there on the map. A good solid 30 seconds ahead of Hulkenberg, who is probably another 10 seconds ahead of us. I called that about right, actually. So we're about 23 seconds behind points on lap 53. 10 to go. Unless about 5 people will retire from the top 10, we're not getting points. Albon might even catch us by the end of this, but I think we might have enough to hold on. I'll save you grace with Albon. There might be the wave of people that just lapped him from 2nd through 5th. 6th even, I think it might be. No, 2nd through 5th. Hamilton and Stroll are fighting each other on the road behind. And I'm not certain they'll catch Nick in 5 laps. New podium, though. Alonso in 3rd, if he keeps there. It's a little bit different, the shake-up. I mean, by and large, it's still kind of there. The top 8 are the same top 8, and 9 through 12 are still Alpine and Haas in any order. Just De Vries has pulled off a worldie here a little bit, ahead of the 2 Williams, as things stand, which I don't think he has been all season so far. So, yeah, Alonso upsetting the apple cart a little bit there, but otherwise it's kind of status quo, as it has been all year. 14th might be viewed as okay by the board, even though it's not points. But this is going to be one of the shortest videos in the season, I imagine. It's weird how many incidents there were in those early laps, and now there's been nothing since. So Verstappen's just started last lap, so it's the last lap for everyone at this point, as of the next time they cross the line. It does look like Piastri might get caught, so I'm actually just going to turn up just so he maybe doesn't yield. Oh, he does. He still yields on the final lap, so kind of irrelevant. I think he had the individual time on Albon still. Yeah, he still had 10 seconds even being lapped. Could probably put, we could push the fuel anyway because we're a lap down. So here, because it doesn't do it in laps and it does it in kilograms, I think realistically we can start races at least a kilogram down. What a dull race. I hope I got a thumbnail out of that somewhere. It's stupid he still had my camera on when watched the crash, but a little bit of sign of life there. And I think, you know, his early 12th was a little bit inflated because of George Russell being behind. And then Norris got him later on, maybe. I don't know who else was behind him at that point. He fought Norris briefly, but he ended up 12 seconds behind. Piastri's two-stop definitely didn't work out. Alonso held on for 3rd, though, which is nice. A new podium as he straightens his hair. What a weird animation that was. Well, good news is, with no safety cars or anything like that in the remainder of the race, it was absolutely the right decision to bin off Yuki Tsunoda for that race entirely, at the point we did. As for the overall race, I didn't actually realise this was Lewis Hamilton's best result of the season so far, in 6th, which is kind of depressing for him. But the top 12 remained the top 12, even though Nico Hulkenberg went down 2 places and Kevin Magnussen went up 4 places. It is Nick de Vries's up 4, one of his best performances. Max Verstappen does leapfrog Charles Leclerc and Fernando Alonso with the podium, leapfrogs his teammate, as he rightly should at last, but no movement anywhere else at all. Now the good news for us, by the way, is 7th place still only has 2 points. We just need to find 2 points. A huge move for AlphaTauri as we acquire Dr. Beer off Alpine, who is 10 points overall average better rated than the previous head of aerodynamics that we had. So that will make a huge difference going forward there. My concern in acquiring Daniel Ricciardo is I know he's already regressed from 83 to 82, so I don't know if it's actually sensible at getting him in the game. Whilst it is a 6-point bump for this season, it's very likely he ends the season around 81. So you could be better off acquiring someone like Alexander Albon, who could still go forwards as a driver. Also, I think he's been slightly done dirty at 81. I know he's 27 now, or you acquire someone like Porsche who will develop faster. In what was kind of more of an attempt to just to sort of see what kind of contract Albon would want, it's at least 4.8 million. He's on 3 million there already, and Nick de Vries currently is on 1.5 himself. So it'd be a big jump financially, but we've run out of negotiation choices there. And if Albon won't take 4.8, then Ricciardo certainly won't. Yeah, Ricciardo realistically wants way too much. It's over 7.2, and I've run out of negotiation with him. So I think the irony is both Mick Schumacher and Porsche would want more as well. And neither of them are in the Red Bull driver program. The best Red Bull driver program driver is Liam Lawson, and he's already the reserve driver at AlphaTauri. Iwasa's the next best, along with Hauger, who I should really scout. I kind of forgot to mention Zane Maloney and all that, but he can't race in F1 yet. The other thing we could do is get Dan Fallows in as a technical chief, but I think he's only just gone to Aston Martin in real life, so trying to keep it vaguely realistic. It felt a bit weird taking him off him, and Simone Ress is only one better now that Jody's got up to 81 himself, so not really seeing the return on that one. Simone's buyout is, fairly negligible these days, but we'll leave that there. It's Monaco next time, which is always a place where you can get something if something crazy happens, particularly in qualifying, because then you can hold people up or just pit early and hold everyone up that way. Fingers crossed that might be the case. But until next time, thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed this, like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal by now. Until next time, ta-ra.